I don't know if this counts as a hot take or not. Freshly baked soft cookies, even where you use like too much butter or whatever, like soft cookies, are amazing. However, if you're buying store-bought soft cookies, they're disgusting. They should always be hard. I don't know what it is, but they I bought these cookies. They're quote unquote soft, but it's like fake soft. It's not the same. I don't like it. I think it just having ordinary hard cookies that you buy at the store are better than like the fake soft ones, like the chewy cookies. Okay. I think I walked through my debate with Mordecai. I talked about all of the doubt and fear that he instilled in me. Did I talk about that? Or did I just end my stream after we went over it? You talking about prepackaged cookies or cookies from a bakery? Prepackaged cookies. The notes that I'd written for this day was... The interview with Mordechai Kedar was fascinating. The man has a very thorough understanding of history, and his dedication to studying and mastering Arabic was commendable and seemed to impart some unique insights onto him about the surrounding Arabs and those in Israel and Palestine. I definitely came away from this interview feeling a lot more depressed about the situation than I'd expected. He argued very strongly that Palestinians and their organization around their familial systems preclude them from having or from ever operating a kind of traditional government. He was able to point to surrounding successful and failing Arab states and make convincing arguments for the only ones thriving as being the ones that were divided upon. This doesn't make sense. Were divided up and given to large clans and families. He alluded several times to the Treaty of Al-Hudaybiyah, claiming that Arabs could never essentially be trusted to not take advantage of an ally's weakness. Okay. I wrote a diary every day, just like keeping track of thoughts in case I forgot something or whatever. But okay. I think I basically communicated this. Okay. Here is Mordecai and LonerBox. Looking for a diary? Yeah, I took notes each day that I was there just to like mark my thoughts for each day so I wouldn't forget anything in case there was something I wanted to bring up right over. Can you tackle this YouTuber at some point, please? They provide the most logical and evidence-based anti-Israeli arguments I've ever seen. What? Debunking the state of Israel. Christ. Mordecai versus LonerBox.
I'm joined here by...
This is 2 hours. And maybe in an hour, I'll take a 10-minute break for that other video I'm watching. We'll see, and then... Okay. Okay, good luck.
Dr. Mordechai Kedar. Dr. Kedar, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much.
Oh, shit.
Before we went...
On LonerBox, I might have been... I think they had... The mic got fucked on this, maybe, but we'll see.
Live, you showed me this, which was a victory emblem from Hezbollah in the year 2000, after the Israelis withdrew. It has the outline of the Lebanese flag with Hezbollah's logo replacing the Lebanese cedar. In 2006, Israel went to war with Hezbollah for just over a month. And there's always been fairly mixed opinions about the results of that war. In Israel, it seems to be that there was a split opinion on whether or not Israel won or Hezbollah won. I feel like most people said that neither side won. Obviously, in Lebanon, people felt like Hezbollah did win. I once read that one of the problems with that war was that Israel had expected a homogenous Arab enemy. They were used to winning wars against conventional militaries in 67, 73. They were used to fighting with Palestinians in the urban areas during the Second Intifada. And in 2006, the idea was that they hadn't really, that they expected something less, something easier. What was your opinion?
So as a quick background, okay, to know different players in the region. Hamas is kind of like goofy. Palestinian Islamic Jihad is kind of like goofy. A lot of the fighting that goes on in Israel, from the Second Intifada to all of the Israeli-Gazan wars, are just kind of like goofy. The Israeli military is clearly superior, and Hamas needs to engage in a lot of asymmetrical warfare in order to have a chance of basically having any chance of winning. That means that Hamas has to function. Like, what do you do when your enemy outclasses you in every possible way? Soldier to soldier, tech to tech, army size to army size, right? Then you have to play into their weaknesses and your strengths. And so the strength that you have are things like international support and the ability to hide among civilian populations. This is why Hamas engages in things like human shielding, things like not using uniforms, hiding weapons in houses. The goal being that if you're going to strike us, you're going to kill civilians at the same time. Every attack against us is an attack against yourself and your reputation in the international community. This is how Hamas fights. This is what Israel has kind of learned to fight against. Yeah. In 82, I haven't studied the Lebanon wars as much, but in 82, Israel got mired down in a war in Lebanon, I think to fight against or to try to expel, I think it was it the PLO in 82 from Lebanon, I think. My understanding is that conflict was pretty easy. It was kind of memey. Like, they went in, they kind of dominated, and I think the PLO got expelled or whatever, and then they pulled out, they left. So they'd fought in southern Lebanon before. They'd fought conventional wars. Obviously, in conventional wars, their performance was always really good, generally speaking. They fought in Lebanon once in 82. They dealt with the First and Second Intifada. And then, after the Second Intifada, in 2006, there was a second Lebanon war. Now, I said before, Hamas is goofy. Hezbollah is not goofy. And when Israel went into Lebanon for the second Lebanon war in 2006, Israel was expecting more meme warfare. But the Hezbollah military, their strategy and tactics were incredibly sophisticated. When Israel goes into, my understanding is that, like, when Israel goes into the Gaza Strip, they're like a booby-trapped home might be like a wire attached to like an IED, and you go in and then it blows up, okay? For Lebanon, for Hezbollah, it's like 5-inch steel reinforced missile silos opening up from residential homes, okay? The Israeli military was not at all prepared for the sophistication, the resources, the tactics like that Hezbollah had when it came time to participate in that war. They were sophisticated on a technological level. So I mentioned that, like, the equipment that they had available to them, they were able to wiretap. Or I don't know if wiretap. They were able to do. It's not OSINT. What's it called? Signal interception. I think, like, the Israeli military was like, the commanders were telling people, you guys need to fucking stop talking over phones and shit. You need to stop doing this because they intercept your shit, and nobody believed it. It's just fucking, they're Arabs, okay? What are they going to do? I mean, like, they can't. They were very SIGINT, maybe, yeah. Hezbollah was intercepting Israeli military signals. They were intercepting communications. They were using the terrain to their advantage, which is not strange for guerrilla fighters. But not only were they able to pop in and out of tunnels and use the terrain to their advantage, they were also able to stand and fight in conventional ways. I think there was a famous quote from a soldier, whatever, basically about, like, we rolled up on a large Hezbollah position where there were soldiers, and they stood and fought. They're not supposed to do that, and they could do that, and they could survive and win battles like that. Israel bragged about trying to they tried to go after Nasrallah. They wanted to kill him. They tried to, like, take out their propaganda radio station. And after hundreds of strikes and attacks, I think in the entire month-long war, I think it was about a month, they managed to take this radio station down for 2 minutes, okay? So the claim, Olmert wants to say at the end of Lebanon, well, the war was successful because the attack stopped, which they kind of did, I believe, for at least for a period. And they managed to destroy a lot of their missile stockpile. But the sophistication of the Hezbollah military was way, way, way more than what Israel had originally planned to run into. So Hezbollah is not like meme people like Hamas. they're not like guerrilla fighters with like human shields and they kind of like, fight with Kalashnikov, AK-47s and do dumb shit like that. It is a very sophisticated military operation. I believe that right now they are rumored to have the third largest stockpile of missiles in the world, I believe, arguably enough to overwhelm any Iron Dome system. So just, yeah, these are just, when you think of Hezbollah, these are the things that you should have in mind. Yeah. I think there's one other thing I was going to say. Oh. Nasrallah, I don't think, when Israel did do that invasion, Nasrallah wasn't planning on it happening. He didn't think Israel would actually invade. He was hoping they were bluffing and they did. But they did, yeah. But, okay. It's just like random things. Yeah, there you go. Someone in a YouTube chat said the war only ended though because of international pressure. Israel was starting to win, and that's when the UN brokered agreement forced us back. Maybe, but... I mean, I don't know what relevancy that has to anything I just said. And then also, I believe in this war, Israel tried to engage in the strategy of, like, if there is, like, damage to civilian buildings and shit, we don't give a fuck because we think that the civilian population instead is going to blame Hezbollah on it. I think they were even dropping leaflets saying things like, guys, if your shit is getting fucked, look, it's because of Hezbollah. But civilians don't work that way, and they didn't work that way. And the Lebanese did not become more partial to Israel because of Hezbollah. They just hated Israel even more for bombing their shit. So, yeah, but... Somebody linked this. BBC of this world. Hunting for Hezbollah, long version. Somebody said they showed a tunnel in here. Wait, where? That video may be copyrighted. Show me a tunnel. Where? Give me a timestamp. Is it this?
Of Israeli.
Almost. Under
Total secrecy. Surveillance. Then suddenly we got lucky.
Oh.
They're notoriously difficult to find. But then suddenly we got lucky. A hidden entrance leading deep into the darkness. No one's filmed in one of these since the war.
they go all the way around under the mountain.
Despite all Israel's surveillance technology, bunkers like this were built in total secrecy.
Who would ever think there's such a thing under the mountain? All this done by
Now, I don't want to overplay like my architectural understanding. Maybe there are reasons why these tunnels are more sophisticated, but just from a layman's perspective, like even looking at the difference in construction quality between this tunnel and what I've seen of like the Hamas ones.
IDF, which reviewed our footage for operational security pit.
So we're a concrete above below.
These look pretty nice too, I guess. I shouldn't shit on Hamas too much.
Just the week before.
Camera is foggy. Does
Yeah, that is. We're investigating that.
a manhole?
I like the rectangular building though. Seems more. Actually, wait. Why would you build rectangularly? Don't arches hold weight better? North Korea helped them with tunnels, according to some reports.
They have light system.
Oh, also keep in mind too that I believe the territory of Gaza is renowned for being incredibly easy to dig tunnels through. That's why Israel had to build the concrete wall underneath behind the fence leading in Israel. It's just supposed to be a really easy area to tunnel through. I don't know why. Maybe this is all sand or the dirt is very soft or whatever. But
No electricity today. These are water tanks they use. They're still full too, almost full.
Jesus.
Deep underground, Hezbollah fighters could sit out weeks of Israeli bombardment, hiding in places like this.
Unbelievable. What was this room? It looks like a bedroom, this suite here. This is the bathroom. There's a shower in there. There's a shower. This is the shower area. This is the kitchen area. They even have a sink. These guys had it all. Electricity, hot water, running water, kitchen, sink, bathroom, shower. It's a home away from home.
We pressed on. Our target was Bint Jebel, Hezbollah's so-called capital of resistance in the south.
Dang it. Anyway, okay.
Watching that happen.
First of all, we have to understand what we are facing, especially in Lebanon, but not only. It's Lebanon, it's Gaza, and it's in other places as well. The Middle East is, I would say, a bunch of failing countries. Lebanon is a failed state. Syria Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Sudan, and Gaza also, some kind of a failure. All these countries, except for Libya still, became, because they are failing states, they cannot function as states, they became places of militias which Iran initiated. Starting in Lebanon, already in the 80s, I'm talking about 45 years ago, more or less, in Lebanon, continuing in Iraq after the war on Iraq in 2003, which collapsed Saddam. So this is why Iraq became the front yard of Iran. Syria.
Christoph Farrow, thanks for the tier 5 sub, buddy. There must be a better purpose for your interviews and footage than just pressing play to 9K viewers. I already said that August will upload this onto my channel. My going over it will upload all the original interviews. Whether or not I turn it into something bigger than that, I don't know. The issue I always have is I just don't like putting any of my thoughts down permanently because I feel like I'm always learning more and it just feels weird. But I don't know, maybe I'll turn it into something bigger. I'm not sure yet, but I just want to go over it so it's at least out there.
After 2010, when the Arab Spring, so-called, started in Syria, Syria became a failing state. And of course, Yemen. Because of civil war, the state is dysfunctional. And all these countries became hubs for militias, which Iran sponsors. Hezbollah in Lebanon, 17 militias today in Syria, 50 militias in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, Hamas, Hezbollah, Hamas, the Islamic Jihad, and another one in Gaza. And this is actually, they are all more or less connected to Iran.
Something that you should keep in mind from my studies, maybe there are types of revolutions or coups that I have not researched yet that break this pattern, but basically every single coup that I'm familiar with, which isn't that many, a couple in South America, a couple, the Afghanistan one with the Soviets and then our back, the Mujahideen, the attempted ones in Syria, 2011 Egypt, and the one where we did the Shah in Iran. Of the coups that I am familiar with, people have this assumption that a coup is when you have an otherwise normally functioning government, and then another country comes in and they basically start some shit, and now they've got like their leader installed. Generally, my understanding is that doesn't really happen. Coups generally happen where you've got international body, or you've got another country who's trying to secretly support somebody in a country that is highly unstable already. I don't think you generally have a coup in a country or are able to do a coup in a country where they have like a stable and strong government. I'm not bringing this up to say that, well, if a coup happened, it wasn't the US's fault or it wasn't the Soviet Union's fault. I'm not bringing that up to say that. I'm just saying that sometimes people, I think, are overplaying the stability of a country beforehand, and then consequently, they're overplaying how much destruction the foreign power, the Soviets or the Americans, caused in a country, how much like damage they caused. Because the reality is that if there's any country where a coup can be instigated lightly by a foreign power, that country probably already was experiencing severe issues that were leading to high levels of instability, such that the government was going to probably collapse anyway. Just again, from what I've seen, rather than viewing coups as like a foreign power basically trying to destroy a government and putting their own people in, coups feel to me like a foreign power is looking at a fucked situation. They know that shit's going to be fucked, and they're trying to put their thumb on the scale so that when it's fucked and it devolves into chaos, their guy gets in. Whether it's to the detriment of the people there or not doesn't matter, as long as they're serving the interests of the country that's putting their thumb on the scale. I think generally speaking, that's what the that's how coups work. Yeah, someone in Kickshot said, coup leaders have low legitimacy or no institutional backing. Yeah, if you're getting couped, your shit's already kind of like fucked, generally speaking. So, yeah.
Now, what is the difference with a state and an organization like these militias? A state is bound. A state like Israel is bound with international law, with the United Nations Security Council, with human rights organizations, with Human Rights Council in Geneva, in all kinds of courts in Hague, and all these things which are binding the hands of a state, while organizations like Hezbollah, Hamas, and all the other militias which Iran implanted in the Middle East are free. And they are not bound to anything. They can do whatever they like. They can shoot, they can rape, they can kill, they can massacre, they can do whatever they like. And the world is helpless vis-a-vis these organizations. And Iran actually, this is how Iran spread its hegemony over these countries. And if you look at the map, you see in the north, you see Iraq, Syria, Lebanon. In the south, you see Yemen. And in between, like a nutcracker, in between Israel, Jordan, Saudi Arabia. And this is the Iranian plan to crack these nuts with the nutcracker, which they prepare with these militias, not states, militias, which Hezbollah is one of them. Now, what does mean militias? Militias can hide behind citizens, among citizens. So a state like Israel, which is bound by the international law and norms, has a problem how to attack Hezbollah when they are living and functioning and shooting and launching missiles from the neighborhoods which they live in, which many people live in, men, women, children live in. What are you as a state can do with this? And this is the real problem in Gaza and in Lebanon as well. How do you deal with such a thing? And this is how bright the Iranians are. And the world knew about this. The world knows very well about these militias, know about the weapons and the ammunition and the training which they give to all these people. They know very well, and the world allowed Iran spread its hegemony over these countries in order to get rid of the countries which are the allies of the West. Israel, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Emirates, Oman, Kuwait, which are all now targeted by the Iranian Nutcracker. Of course, once in a while we have to fight those tentacles of the Iranian octopus.
Hold on, I just want to address this because I see this dog shit argument brought up all the time. It's not as if Hamas has the choice between having a regular army or being a guerrilla group. Yes, they do. There's no reason why they can't have a regular army. They absolutely do have a choice, and they choose to fight in a way that maximizes civilian deaths because of the difference in military capability between them and Israel. The problem is that when people like you are applying those standards, what you're basically saying is, well, if you're a small enough army, you should be able to violate international norms in order to fight your opponent. If you're going to say that, then fine, you can say that. But that means that the person that you're fighting should also get to violate international norms and blow up your entire fucking country. Like that, you can't. You see, this can't be the case. If you have a rule set, everybody has to follow the rules. You can't accept some people from following the rules and not others, because what that leads to is nobody following the rules. Because you're like, well, fuck this. If they don't have any rules, well, then fuck that. I'm just going to do whatever the fuck I need to do to win. This is stupid. Why would I fight with one hand tied behind my back when this guy, who's 4'9", gets to fight me with a knife?
Maybe it's time to deal with the head. I don't know.
I feel like, especially with the 2006 war, a lot of people branded it as an intelligence failure. You worked in intelligence for about 25 years, starting 1970. Do you feel like there was something that Israel missed or should have done differently?
Yes. Look, we ran away from Lebanon, from the southern perimeter which we kept.
Is there a real term he's saying, the Iranian Nutcracker, or is that just how he's choosing to describe it? Well, Iran has a special, I believe Iran has a special part of their let me see, military? What do you call this? The Army of also the Iranian Revolutionary Guard is a multi-service primary branch of the Iranian Armed Forces. I believe Iran has a special international segment of this called, I think it's the Quds Force. I believe that this is what Soleimani was the head of, that we assassinated under Trump. I'm not even going to be able to spell his name. I don't even know why I'm pretending to try to... Was Soleimani the head of the Quds Force or the whole IRGC? Soleimani. Just please, autocorrect me. Soleimani. Assassination, USA. There we go. Was commander of the Quds Force, one of the 5 branches of Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. I believe that these people are basically specialized in fucking with shit in other countries. I think this is probably generally what he's referring to, is Iran has a heavy hand in politics all across the greater Middle East. Soleimani was considered, I think, one of the big architects of the Iranian expansion, the Iranian proxy expansion. I don't know how you would describe it. Helping all of these little proxy groups across the Middle East, including attacks on U.S. troops. No? Yes. In Iraq? Yes. But this is kind of like the part of Iran that is big in fucking with other countries and supporting people like the Houthis and Hamas and Hezbollah and all that. Yeah.
The security zone. In the night between the 23rd and 24th of May 2000, 24 years ago. On June 1st, like a week later, I published an article in both Haaretz and Yediot Ahronot. The same article. They got mad at me. The same article under the title, "And the next president, Hassan Nasrallah," means ruler of Lebanon. I was attacked from right and left. Oh, what do you mean? The next president? A president can be only a Christian in Lebanon, according to the president. There is somebody above the president who operates the president like a puppet. And this will be Hassan Nasrallah. And today, it's more than clear that I was right 24 years ago when I wrote this. So Israel didn't miss it. Apparently, some Israeli officials missed it. Or maybe some decision makers as well. Not in Israel only, also in the West. You know, people in the West tried for a long time to divide between Hezbollah, the military wing, and Hezbollah, the economic wing. After all, Hezbollah is a whole conglomerate of companies. They have shares in the airliner of Lebanon, Middle Eastern Airlines. They have the biggest construction company in Lebanon, named Jihad al-Bina, means the jihad of construction. For them, construction is also part of the jihad. They have cellular phone company, they have insurance companies, they have everything. And actually, Hezbollah is a state within a state. Yet, they did not declare that they take Lebanon over, although they control Lebanon almost totally, because if they declare that they take Lebanon over, they will be bound with the international rules of behavior. And they don't.
This is not strictly true. Actually, this isn't true at all. You're always bound by laws relating to international conflict, whether you are a state or not. You don't get to just break these rules just because you're not a formal state or a formal governing entity. Well, although I've heard the argument, I think I've read this. This argument referenced on, it might have been the IHL website or it might have been the Libre Institute website, that some people say, well, technically the UN Charter and those rules only apply to states, but I don't think our modern interpretation of any international law would release participants to armed conflicts, would release them from any humanitarian obligations. So I don't think this matters that much.
Over, although they control Lebanon almost totally, because if they declare that they take Lebanon over, they will be bound with the international rules of behavior.
So how come the international community does not give a shit about all these organizations? I don't know. I don't have a good answer to that. I mean, like, the U.S. sanctions the fuck out of Iran, but I don't know why there's not as much focus or fixation on... I don't have a good answer. I'm not sure.
And they do not want to be bound with these rules. So they want to continue to be an organization.
Aren't these treaties only applicable to signatories? Kind of, but it depends. If you want like a really quick and dirty guide, if you were to Google like IHL rules, there's a thing called customary international law. Customary international law means that every single person is bound by it, even if they're not a signatory to any convention or treaty whatsoever. Everybody is expected to follow every part of what is considered customary international law, with the exception of certain customary international law legal things can be contravened if you have a treaty with another party. But you can like Google like IHL rules on the International Humanitarian Law database that's ran by, I think, the Red Cross. All of these rules would be things that every single country is expected to follow, irrespective of what you're signed on to or if you're a state actor, non-state actor, or anything else like that.
So they can do to us whatever they like. When we are bounded, we are bound by the rules of engagement.
I think, remember when I was young and Hezbollah was getting funded by Iran to do that jihadi reconstruction project after the war. I think a combination of that and also disappointing Israel by not letting them achieve their objectives, I think that obviously boosted Nasrallah's popularity quite a lot. I think that was the first time in my life where I remembered hearing Lebanese Christians saying nice things about Nasrallah because he fights with Israel, he rebuilds afterwards. Do you think
today Christians are running away from Lebanon en masse because the country becomes a Shi'i country?
Do you think unilateral withdrawal was a mistake then in 2000?
One of the confusing things about Lebanon, and I don't know enough about modern Lebanon to really say this as much, but or I can't give you like a deep explanation of how this works, but like Lebanon, my understanding is Lebanon, the country today, is basically split into two parts. Southern Lebanon, I don't know how far south you go. It's further south than Beirut, but southern Lebanon is basically de facto ran by Hezbollah, and I believe Hezbollah has seats on the formal Lebanese government as well. So the country of Lebanon is not wholly within the control of the government of Lebanon. Hezbollah de facto runs the south, and they have, I mean, their military, they would crush. I don't know why they don't just take over northern Lebanon. Maybe it would draw too much attention. Maybe they don't want the responsibility of running. I'm not 100% sure actually, but that's essentially how I think the country is kind of structured right now. But it's kind of fucked.
Look, the withdrawal has two aspects. One is the withdrawal itself, and the other one is the way you do it. The fact that we withdrew from Lebanon, I think, was okay. Although, whenever we leave an area, it becomes a terror area. Yet there is a limit, so which we occupy part of Egypt and part of Jordan and part of Syria, in order to make sure that there are no terrorists today. Okay, okay, you have to replace a ruling by deterrence. Deterrence can work only if they believe you that you will do whatever you tell them that you're going to do to them, if they dare to do something to you. Okay? Deterrence is the most important way, actually the only way how Israel can operate as a state without wars, constant wars. Look, we have today a war with Hamas for almost 8 months, and we are talking now at the beginning of June 2024, only because we lost the deterrence. Hezbollah are shooting at us day and night only because we lost the deterrence. And the deterrence was lost inter alia because of the marcation of the maritime border between us and Lebanon.
One thing that I felt more strongly about after studying this conflict and looking at the current conditions of the world, I do believe very strongly in deterrence. I think that deterrence needs to be unequivocal. I haven't heard good arguments against it. I think that if you attack certain people, you should expect to be hit back very hard. And the idea that has kind of been defeated right now, I feel like in the international community, because of the existence of so many non-state actors that act in such reckless ways, I think it fosters a very bad environment. Remember, international law for armed conflict balances two things that are essential. One is the protection of people that aren't participating in conflict, and the other is a state's ability to conduct conflict. Both of these are of equal importance. The reason why is because if you don't protect civilians, then you have horrendous atrocities where hundreds of thousands, millions of civilians are just getting killed indiscriminately. But the second is because if you don't protect a state's ability to conduct war, states won't follow international law. So international law is balanced on these two prongs, and it is essential that the balance is even. Because if you go far off into one side, shit will get always bad for everybody. But the issue is that non-state actors make it very difficult for state actors to deal with the armed conflict, because accomplishing their objectives almost always means a lot of civilian damage, because the non-state actors, they don't have governments generally, they don't care about civilian support, and more civilian deaths only increases their international standing. So, are you critical of Biden at all for being less hawkish than someone like Hillary? I'm not saying I should, I don't think that you have to be more or less hawkish. I don't care about how hawkish you are, and I don't care about where your red lines are. But what I'm saying is that whatever they are, they have to be enforced. So if somebody says, listen, actually, we don't care at all about what happens here, blah, 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 but we will say you absolutely cannot, invade another country wearing sports jerseys, okay? You can do whatever the fuck else you want. No sports jerseys. If somebody invades with a sports jersey, you need to have 2 aircraft carriers, F-35s and everything, and you need to annihilate whoever did that. That should be the expectation. Because when people are putting these red lines in the sand, people with the power to enforce them in massive ways, then it should be understood by everybody in the region. Okay, fuck, well, we can do what we want, but we can't break these rules, because if we do, the U.S. is going to show up and fuck our shit up. It can't be like weaseling or, being flip-floppy or unsure of where the red lines are. Once a red line has been placed, everybody needs to agree with it, because the understanding needs to be if you break it, you will be annihilated. That needs to be the understanding, yeah.
Which was made by the Israeli Prime Minister Lapid, Yair Lapid, who understood nothing in the Middle East and gave the Lebanese this gift of parts of the Israeli economic space in the sea for free, only because he wanted to prevent a war. Means he showed cowardice. He showed the fact that he is afraid of them. And this actually what gave a knockout to the Israeli deterrence.
Is that not Israel's operation in Gaza now? I don't know what you're asking. If you're asking, is Israel just conducting indiscriminate warfare in Gaza? If you believe that, you are so far factually removed from everything. That's on the level of thinking the Holocaust didn't happen. That you're so far beyond any factual reality. It's hard. I would have to walk through so much to even.
It was only a year before this war started. So, what I mean is that Israel should restore its deterrence, because deterrence will enable us to get the reserve soldiers back home in order to work, in order to promote the high-tech and whatever we have. Otherwise, we have to fight forever.
When you say deterrence, what does that look like?
Deterrence based on credible threat. Credible threat means that your enemies believe that if they shoot one bullet at you, this is their end.
No, not indiscriminate, that it's an operation to restore deterrence through demonstrating overwhelming force. Oh, maybe that could arguably be a part of that. I think that's not necessarily the worst thing. Yeah, sure.
And they believe it. And they know that this is what will happen. This is a credible threat. Unfortunately, our enemies from Iran and others, this is the only thing which they know. And how do I know? The Iranians who control all these militias, they are not afraid of anything. They are not afraid of America, they're not afraid of Europe, nothing.
Do you apply this same expectation when it comes to more diplomatic red lines? Yes. Biden specifically said Israel invading Rafah was a red line. I don't think he ever specifically said that, actually. I think all the talking around that was really vague and stupid. Biden specifically said Israel invading Rafah was a red line, and they proceeded anyway. He's obviously not eager about Israel's war, but in my opinion, it looks kind of dumb to say this is a red line, and they continue to support after the crowd. I don't think they ever explicitly said that. I think all the messaging around that was like very convoluted publicly, from what I remember. But I mean, like, yeah, if you place a red line, you should stick to it. I mean, I would say the general principle isn't tested by asking me on specifics. Because I could say, like, well, let's say that was a red line. I would say, well, it's stupid to place that red line, but you should still enforce your red lines. Even if they're stupid red lines, you should still enforce them. Like, you would be asking me, do you think this is a good red line? Not, should we have not enforced this red line? The answer is always enforce every red line, and then we can argue about which ones are reasonable or not. The red line claim. Okay, let's see. I don't think I've watched this video before.
Is your red line with Prime Minister Netanyahu? Do you have a red line? For instance, would invasion of Rafah, which you have urged him not to do, would that be a red line?
Okay, we'll see what he says. I feel like when I was reading stories about this at the time, I feel like it was always like, it would be a red line to go into Rafah to cause so many civilians to die, or there are too many civilians there right now, so they can't go into Rafah. I feel like it was always qualified like that. But I don't know, maybe he'll say something stronger here, in which case I just say, oh, well, he shouldn't have said this, it was stupid.
It is a red line, but I'm never going to leave Israel. The defense of Israel is still critical. So there's no red line. I'm going to cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. They don't have. But there's red lines that if he crosses, and you cannot have 30,000 more Palestinians.
Yeah, this is about what I remember.
As a consequence of going after. There's other ways to deal.
Like I don't think I've seen this video, but I've read articles, and I think it's more or less summarizing this, yeah.
To get to deal with the trauma caused by Hamas. It's like look, the first time I went over, I sat with them and I sat with the war cabinet. I said, look, don't make the mistake America made.
Yeah.
Only when the West directs a credible threat to them. What do I mean? If you remember, in 1979 they took over the country, the Islamists in Iran. Very soon afterwards, they bursted into the American embassy, although they are not supposed to, because an embassy is an extraterritorial space which belongs to the country, the guest country. And they captured 52 American diplomats for 444 days. Diplomats are immune. You're not allowed to catch them and to put them in jail. The maximum you can tell them go out within 24, 76 hours. Okay, you're not allowed to catch them and they have immunity. But they kept them 444 days when Jimmy Carter was the president. When did they release them? The airplane which carried these 52 diplomats left the Iranian airspace when the new president, Ronald Reagan, stood on the lawn of the White House pledging allegiance to the Constitution as a president. Why did they release the people? No payment or nothing. Because during his campaign, he said more than once and many times he said that the first thing which he is going to do when he steps into the White House as a president is to take care of the Iranians. Now, he was, an actor. And when he said, I'm going to take care of the Iranians, they understood exactly what he means by taking care of the Iranians. And this was a credible threat. So they released the 52 diplomats without anything. No money, no nothing. This was the first instance. Second instance was in 1988. They had 8-year war with Iraq. And by mistake, the Americans knocked down an Iranian airliner, an airplane with 200 or a bit more passengers and crew people. It was above the Gulf. By mistake. Khomeini thought that this is not a mistake. And the Americans actually are joining the Iraqis now against Iran. This was something which he couldn't face. Iraq, he could fight against them for as long as he wanted. But when America comes to help Iraq, this is too much, and he decided to surrender. And he waved the white flag. Okay? Now, although it was not a real threat, he considered it to be a credible threat, so he surrendered. The third example of surrendering of the Iranians was in 2003, in the invasion of Iraq. Of America and NATO and Australia came, against Saddam Hussein. And immediately, the Iranians stopped their military nuclear program because they heard all kinds of Americans talking about that Iran is the next after.
Is that true? I thought Carter did most of the negotiations with hostages and Reagan came in office at the end. I don't actually know why they released Iranian hostage release. What did they state reasons for why they released them right as Reagan came in? What are your thoughts on Israel most likely will go inside southern Lebanon? I mean, like strategically, ethically, I think they can justify it, but like politically, I mean, doing another invasion right after Gaza, that's a rough one. The completion of negotiations signified by the signing of the Algiers Accords on January 19th, 1981. The hostages were released on January 20th, 1981. That day, minutes after Ronald Reagan was sworn in as president, and while he was giving his inaugural address, the 52 American hostages were released to U.S. personnel. There are theories and conspiracy theories regarding why Iran postponed the release until that moment. Okay, so they might have negotiated all of this prior to that. It might be, he might just be wrong on this point, but.
Iraq. We'll finish in Iraq within 3 months. We plan to finish in Iraq by June. And the next will be either Syria or Iran or both. I know it from, very close. I was part of a discussion group which discussed this issue. And the Iranians understood that they are going to be the next target after Iraq. So they closed their nuclear military program. And the insurgency in Iraq erupted with the blessing of Iran, with the help of Iran, ammunition and training and weapons which came from Iran. And the Americans had all the information needed to know that the Iranians are behind the insurgency. And the Americans did nothing against Iran. Nothing. 2006, the Iranians drew the conclusion that America became a paper tiger. So they renewed their nuclear military program. Okay? Now, these two instances show you that Iranians know only one thing, credible threat. Therefore, if any American president
Limeo, Destiny immediately considers a conspiracy theory with no evidence that fits into his worldview. I literally just say I don't know the details about this thing. That's why I literally just wikied it and I started to read parts of it. Like, what are you talking about? I know that there were hostages. I know they were released when Reagan came into office. Those are two pieces of evidence. I just don't know if they released them because of any credible threat that Reagan would have made, or I just didn't know. That's why we literally just looked it up. But okay, stay ass paying, dude.
Wants them to give up on the nuclear program, and it's not too late. He has to send them a letter saying as follows: Dear Iranians, we don't believe in one word, even one word which you say. You lied on us many times. You conned us and you deceived us. Your time is over and our patience is over. You have 1 week exactly to dismantle all your nuclear military program in these sites, to ship them out to us, and you have exactly 1 week. Don't call us, we will not call you, and we are around you. We are already warming the engines. Read our lips, we mean business. Dismantle everything, because in 1 week from now, we are flattening you with the earth. Now, the more credible this threat is, the less is the chance that America will have to use it. Why? Because they will do it. Because they succumb only to a credible threat. The same thing is all their mercenaries, all their proxies in the Middle East. Only when they sense a credible threat, they do what they have to do. Means they do what the normal world demands.
I feel like since maybe October 8th or 9th, I've been seeing threats being made from maybe particularly Yoav Gallant and other people in the government that with Hezbollah right now, it feels like every couple of months they've been saying that there's like an expanded operation or escalation is just around the corner. It hasn't happened yet. Do you think it's only a matter of time before those threats have to become like a full incursion into?
Somebody said, real quick, somebody in chat mentioned, wait for real. I never even considered that because I never really knew much about the Iraq war and occupation because I was a kid when it was going on. In response to, was Iran behind the whole insurgency in Iraq? They definitely contributed to it. One thing that you have to keep in mind when you're talking about countries in the Middle East is people in countries in the Middle East don't have as strong of a state identity as we do in the West. I do think that's true in Europe even, and in the United States. In the United States and in Europe, we tend to identify very strongly with our states, with the states that we're in. We're nations of people that live in states. We have these nation states, and we feel very strongly about that. In the Middle East, that cohesive identity has not quite formed yet for, I think, probably for almost every single one of these countries, except for maybe Israel, because a bunch of Jews came together with the idea of like explicitly forming a nation state. So when you talk about like, what do the citizens of Iraq want? What do the citizens of Egypt want? What do the citizens of whatever want? These are these people are held together along sectarian and sometimes oppressive government lines in ways that don't like form these coherent identities of what it means to be like an Iraqi citizen, or a Sudanese citizen, or a Saudi Arabian citizen. Like they break down on other lines. Generally.
Lebanon again, or?
Well, I'm not a prophet, and I don't know what to be in half an hour, because the Middle East is rather, flexible when it comes to behaviors. And what is right for now might not be right in half an hour. So it is rather, I would say, dangerous to predict such a thing, because at the time of war, let's say, Israel will target somewhere in Lebanon a storage of missiles of Hezbollah, and one missile which will be initiated by this bombing will hit, let's say, a school. And God forbid, 100 kids Lebanese will get killed. This changes the whole picture immediately. And it can happen in a minute. So that's why the flexibility of the situation is so that it is hard to predict. Yet, unfortunately, they don't believe that the Israeli threats are credible because of all kinds of things connected to the war in Gaza, to the connections with America, connected to the support from the West, because unfortunately the Western countries, Europe and America as well, do not understand the situation. If you zoom out, you see a Middle East run today by the Iranian jihad. Everybody is afraid of him. The Saudis is afraid, Israel is afraid, Jordan is afraid, everybody is afraid of them. Yet the world allows the situation. Israel stands in front of this jihad, counting on the backing from the West. Because we are here, we are in the Middle East. We count on the support. But what do we feel in our back? That some countries are stabbing us. And this is the big picture.
That some countries are what?
But what do we feel in our back? That some countries are stabbing us.
Are studying us? Are stabbing us? Is that? Oh, I think stabbing us.
Here we are in the Middle East. We count on the support. But what do we feel in our back? That some countries are stabbing us. And this is the big picture of what happens today in the world.
Israel's famously managed to make peace with Egypt and Jordan. It's been at war with Lebanon and Syria for 75 years. You seem to disagree probably more than any other public figure I've seen with Western conventional thought about peace in the Middle East. I don't think you agree with concepts like Resolution 242 or two-state solutions or the concept of an occupied territory in the West Bank of Gaza. What do you think Western conventional thought, what are some of the most important things you think that they don't understand about making peace in the Middle East?
First of all, definition of peace. In the Middle East, peace is always temporary situation, which the Middle Easterner is giving to his enemy only because his enemy is too powerful, is too dangerous to mess with, and invincible. This is peace in the Middle East. However, when the enemy will become weak, will fall asleep on guard, will for any reason, not be deterring as he was before, everything is open. And this is, unfortunately, the culture of the Middle East. It's based on the tribal heritage of the Middle East. And also in Islam. Look, the Prophet Muhammad, the man who designed Islam, And all his behaviors actually are the role model for every Muslim in every situation, in every time, in every place. He gave temporary peace to the infidels of Mecca in Hudaybiyah. It's a village between Mecca and Medina. When he understood they are too powerful and he couldn't defeat them. And he gave them a peace for 9 years, 9 months, and 9 days, almost 10 years. However, this was in the year of 628 CE.
Would this guy be considered far right in Israel? Probably, I think.
However, 2 years later, 630, 2 years later.
Because I don't believe he thinks that any real peace can ever be achieved with any Muslim majority country, I think.
However, this was in the year of 628 CE. However, 2 years later, 630, 2 years later, they understood that they have almost 8 more years of peace, so they went to business. They took their merchandise, took the camels, and they went to India, they went to what today Turkey is, Asia Minor, and they were hi to him, and he were hi to them. And we understood, when he understood that they left town, left Mecca, he took his army, raided Mecca, and this was the end of the peace agreement, when he burned all the idols and took the women, all these things. So, and Muslims until today learn from these two things. One thing is, when you Muslim, when you are weak and your enemy is strong, you can give him a temporary peace, which is okay, because this is what Muhammad did. And he was directed by Allah. He was infallible and ma'soom in Arabic, because he was a Mahdi. He was directed by Allah. He couldn't make any mistake. So you can give a temporary peace to your enemies, and it's okay. The second thing is, if your enemy falls asleep on God, and he is not as powerful as he was, now you can do whatever you have to do. It is allowed. How do I know? This is what Muhammad did. And this is the idea of the Hudaybiyah peace as it's in the Islamic culture and Islamic way of thinking. Now, this is still relevant until this very day. Because when Sadat, the president of Egypt, when he came to Israel in 1977, and then when he signed the peace agreement with us in the Blair House in March of 1979, he based this peace agreement on a fatwa. Fatwa means religious ruling, which was given to him by the Al-Azhar. Al-Azhar is the supreme Sunni authority in Egypt. And this fatwa actually allowed him to give peace to the Israelis based on the precedent of the Hudaybiyah peace, which the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, signed with the Mecca.
I don't know how much I agree with this, but I would have to have an actually challenging conversation with him where we go back and forth. So he talks about Anwar Sadat, the president of Egypt. The only reason he went and made peace with Israel, the implication is that because he was able to, a fatwa was essentially given by religious leadership in Egypt. But it feels like what was happening as kind of like as secular Arab presidents rose, in order to maintain their legitimacy, they would basically kind of get like rubber-stamped fatwas or rubber-stamped approvals from religious leadership in order to kind of carry out the statist agendas that they had. So I don't know if I would say, now he might agree with that and you say, well, yeah, of course, I understand that they have a relationship back and forth. I'm only saying this to show the importance of Islam for the ordinary citizen. I was like, okay, I could agree with that. He might just say, he might not even disagree with that, but that would be like a qualifying point that I would say. At Destiny, I'm Egyptian and I have never heard about this fatwa. Yeah, I hadn't either actually, but I looked it up after you mentioned it, and that is it. I've seen it referenced. We looked this up on stream actually. I'm not going to be able to find it, but it was indeed a thing. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to find it. But
means Hudaybiyah peace means temporary peace, which can last for many years, only as long as Israel is powerful. Why? When Israel will be weak, who knows?
I feel like it's surprising that you mentioned that, because I think based on what I've read about negotiations for peace between Sadat and Begin with Jimmy Carter, at least based on Begin's recollection of it, is that the way I've always heard it described is that Begin was much more difficult to deal with than Sadat when it came towards pursuing the end goal, especially when it came to moving the settlers out of Sinai. It took Begin a very long time to concede that. Do you think it's the same with Jordan as well? Do you think the Hashemites were, the Hussein also gave a temporary peace, or?
I didn't find any mention of the Hudaybiyah peace with John. I didn't look much for it, but I didn't see it. However, the peace between Israel and Jordan is, according to the Jordanian, let's say, people approach, especially the Palestinians, who are the majority of the people. This is a peace between Israel and the ruling family of Jordan, which is a group of less than 100 people. This is the peace between Israel and Jordan. It doesn't include them. And I was faced with this time and again. How do I know? The unions in Jordan are usually held by the Palestinians. The unions of doctors, of dentists, of journalists, many unions are in the hands of Palestinians because the Palestinians are actually the business. The economy of Jordan is based on the Palestinians. The Bedouins, who are with the kingdom, are the ruling people, means the army, the police, the security, while the economy is the Palestinians. And the Palestinians usually do not cooperate with the Israelis. Do not cooperate with the Israelis because they say, we are not part of this peace agreement. This is the king, going to the king. And it's time and again we see it with countries.
So as far as Hussein goes, you think it might have been a permanent peace from him, but from Jordan as a whole, it's only as long as the Hashemites stay in?
Look, the peace agreement between Israel and Jordan was signed in 1994. Right after the signing, like a year after the signing of the Oslo agreements between Israel and Palestinians. King Hussein was afraid that these Oslo agreements will lead to a Palestinian state. And wherever it is, for him it was a threat. Because he was afraid that the Palestinians in Jordan will want to join the Palestinian state and will kick him out. And that's why this was an understanding between Rabin here and King Hussein in Jordan, that both sides will do whatever needed in order to make sure that there is no Palestinian state established.
So Jordan has always been threatened by the establishment of a strong Palestinian state because of essentially the reasons that he just mentioned. Historically, the country of Jordan, leaders of Jordan, I mean, a king was assassinated, Abdullah, in 50 in East Jerusalem. The PLO tried to overthrow the Kingdom of Jordan in 1970. And then Jordan essentially had to relinquish, Hussein II had to relinquish like all control and all say over the West Bank and everything because the Arab world saw the PLO as the sole representatives of the Palestinian people, and there's a huge population of Palestinians that live in Jordan. So for Jordan, the establishment of an independent and strong and thriving Palestinian state has always been like a very scary prospect because they're not sure if it would lead to something negative in that country because, as he said, the Hashemite monarchy, they're the leaders, but they don't have like the very deep ties, the deep family, deep ancestral, huge, like spanning genealogy, I guess you would say, that another like ruling family might in this area.
Palestinian Authority, let it be, but not a Palestinian state. After the king died, came his son. He changed the whole policy, 180 degrees. He now, whenever he sees a microphone.
How credible is that threat, or is it an unwarranted concern? I don't know anything about Palestinians in Jordan. Personally, I would say, we'll get into this as my trip goes on and I talk to more people, because at this point I have very weird opinions. But I would say the Palestinians in the Palestinians that live in Israel and in the West Bank are probably the most resembling of like Western style people of any of the Arabs in the world. That's my feeling right now. I don't have that feeling at this point in my trip, but that's my feeling right now. But
he talks about the necessity to establish a Palestinian state. Why? He hears Palestinians in Jordan, which talk about the alternative homeland. El-Watan el-Badil, it's in Arabic. Means that since here in Judea and Samaria and Gaza, there is no advancement towards a state, let's have a Palestinian state in Jordan. means to dismantle Jordan, maybe to two parts. One will be the Palestinian part, one will be the Bedouin one, which are not the same language, not the same culture. And let's have Palestinian states. Now, he hears it. He hears this discourse. And he is afraid the kingdom will be dismembered. So he wants to establish a Palestinian state here, which will inevitably turn into another Hamastan, either by elections, as happened in 2006, January, when the Hamas won the elections to the legislative councils of the Palestinian Authority. And until this very day, Hamas has the majority of the seats of the Palestinian Authority's legislative council. It can repeat itself time and again. Or Hamas could take the Palestinian state over by force, as they did in Gaza in June of 2007. So either by elections or by coup d'etat, Hamas will turn the future Palestinian state to another Hamastan, because these things happened already. So, who with the
Yes, he is saying Hamastan. That is what he's saying, Hamastan.
right mind would agree to have a Palestinian state. Okay? The king of Jordan doesn't care. For him, Israel could be, could not be. It's okay. No Arab state would establish Israel if Israel was not here. Okay? To say that we force ourselves on them, and they cannot wipe us out so far. This is why we exist here. And this is the only reason that we have peace agreements with those, not because they recognize the legitimacy of the state of Israel as a Jewish state. No. Even Mubarak, our friend for 30 years when he was the president of Egypt, he said 1,000 years will pass and I will not recognize Israel as a Jewish state. He recognized Israel, as fait accompli on the ground. Not a state which has the legitimacy to begin with to exist. And he was right. He represented the way how most of the people in the Middle East think about Israel. They might agree to have relations with Israel only because so far they failed in wiping Israel out of this region.
Okay. I know you're probably tired of explaining this next part, but from about 2012 onwards, you've been pushing this idea called the Emirate solution for Palestine as opposed to a state. How exactly does that work?
Well, for this, we have to understand that the Middle East is roughly divided to two kinds of states: failing states and successful states.
Does his mic get fixed at some point? No, I think on this one, I think his mic died. So I think you're about to edit together we've got like backup mics in case the mic dies. So the audio is a little fucked on his for this one. But I think this is the last interview that's a little bit fucked. I think all the rest past here are pretty good. Or perfect, I should say, maybe.
The failing are Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Sudan, Libya. Algeria is almost failing. And these are more or less the failing states. The successful states are Kuwait, Qatar, 7 Emirates of the United Arab Emirates, in addition to Oman and Saudi Arabia. These are successful states. One would say because of the oil. Wrong. Wrong. Dubai has no oil, and Dubai is a heaven on earth. Iraq has a lot of oil, and so is Libya. And these two countries are hell on earth. So evidently it's not the oil, because if oil was the reason, Dubai would be a hell without oil, and Iraq and Libya would be a heaven on earth. But the situation is totally opposite. The reason is the makeup of the society. In all the failing states, they are conglomerates of clans, ethnic groups, religious groups, and sectarian groups. And the state tries to impose itself on everybody to galvanize them all under the modern state law or the state idea, and they stick to the tradition, unwilling to become what the state wants. Therefore, the state is the enemy of those peoples who live in Syria, Iraq, and so forth. While the Emirates, Kuwait, and Qatar, and all these, each and every one of them is based on one clan, one single clan. Kuwait is Al is clan, Al Sabah. Qatar is Al Thani. Saudi Arabia, Al Saud. Dubai, Al Maktoum. Abu Dhabi, Al Nahyan, and so forth. Everyone, one clan. And when the state is based on one clan, the state is steady because the society is steady and one group. They don't fight with each other because they are one group, one consolidated group. And the country runs by the laws of the group. So there is, I would say, a resemblance of the modern state and the traditional social framework. And this is why these countries are stable socially. On this you can build a stable political system, and on this you can build skyscrapers with handles with gold, from gold. Okay? The economy. If you have oil, you benefit the oil. If you don't have oil, you benefit the business, like Dubai. Why the failing countries are troubled, within themselves. Clans are fighting each other. Ethnic groups like Arabs and Kurds in Iraq are fighting each other. Religious groups fighting each other, Christians and Muslims, and as it was in Lebanon. And sects are fighting each other, like between the Sunni and the Shia, within the state. So this is why these are failing states, and these are successful states. And means the two paradigms are in the Middle East now. Which paradigm will you adopt for the Palestinian issue? The failing one or the successful one?
I know this sounds strange to Western ears, but the concept of diversity being a strength is mostly a modern Western concept much of the world does not buy into. Maybe I can't speak for much of the world, but now that because I read that book that he recommended, I understand where he's getting a lot of these ideas from. What he's essentially talking about is in the West, we value things because of a whole bunch of historical reasons on building this concept of like rule of law. Okay, laws and constitutions and stuff like that, universal ideas. I don't know enough Western history to tell you why, other than I guess through Greeks and Romans or whatever bullshit. But these things have become deeply embedded in the institutions and, more importantly, in the individual minds of all of the people in the West. What this means is that if two people, this is the fundamental difference between the West and, I don't know if I would say most Arabs today, but a traditional Arab mindset at the very least prior to the 1900s. In the West, if two people get into a conflict and people in the country are looking at that conflict, the first place that our mind goes to is who's breaking a law or who's being deprived of a particular thing. That's where our mind goes. Okay, who's breaking a law? What's happening? Because we deeply embedded in us at this point culturally, we think about things like laws and rules and constitutions and rights and frameworks and individuals. For Arab society, if two people are in a conflict, the only thing you look at are the lineages. Who am I more closely related to? That's who I side with. Full stop. That's it. That's how the organization worked. For all of these societies, I'm going to say prior to the 1900s, Mordecai would say that a lot of this still extends to today, which it might. I don't have all the history, or I don't have the current understanding now. But in the past, for Arab society, it would be, who are my family members? There's supposedly a saying. I don't know how popular of an Arab saying it, but it's like me and my brother. I think it's this. I think it's me against my brother and I against my cousin, and my cousin and I against the world. That when people get into conflict, you automatically align with whoever's closest to you in terms of familial ties, full stop. That's it. You don't have to look at there is no analysis of, was he right to attack him? Was there a law or rule broken? That's it. Or I'm sorry, the only thing that matters is who's getting into conflict with who, and then you break out how closely related you are, and then you align on those lines in order to balance the conflict. And then from there, it's just making sure that rights have been, or you've made right between both groups, meaning there's an even payment or there's some recompense or there's something to make it so that whatever group was wronged has like paid back or gotten paid back by the group that wronged, essentially, basically like that. This is essentially what he's describing, kind of. There is no like there is no like rule of law or constitutional rights or individual freedoms or whatever for in this societal organization, basically. How does Islam slide into that? The way that Islam slides into that is Islam slides into it by making Muslims the largest unified family group by making it faithful Muslim versus infidel. By making it, I should have written down all these Arabic terms. What is the name for, there's two words for somebody that's part of Muslim. It's not Ummah or whatever. Or it might be the Ummah versus there's a name for people that are not the Al something. It's the Ummah versus the who? Is it Al Kafir? Al Kafar? Al, maybe it's that? But basically, the way that Islam works is it incorporates that clan structure by making Islam the largest clan, basically, essentially, yeah. And then it also incorporates Dar al-Islam. That might be the term I'm looking for. What did that mean again? Hold on, I'm sorry. Dar al-Islam. What does it stand for? An Islamic term for the Muslim regions of the world. So, house/abode of Islam. This versus what? And then what's the name for the thing that's the opposite of this? Dar al-Islam versus Dar al-Harb? Dar al-Arb? Was a term classically referring to those countries which do not have a treaty of non-aggression or peace with the Muslims. The notion of division of the world does not appear in the Quran or the Hadith. According to some scholars, the term abode of war was something. Oh, okay, maybe. I don't know. I don't remember. I shouldn't have written it down. Fuck all that. I don't need all these fucking terms. But yeah. As a Tunisian American, I can 100% confirm this theory. My family is the number one priority over anything else, no matter what. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Okay. This is the situation in Sweden right now. Look into how Middle Eastern clans are infiltrating the courts and political parties. Okay.
Successful one. And if you really look at the Palestinian society, you can see that how clannish this society is. Because if you tell me the name of somebody, I'll tell you where he lives. Mm-hmm. Because they don't move from place to place. Because your hometown is your birthplace, is your homeland. If you cross the road and you go to another clan, you live in exile. That's their mind. This is why, by the way, there are Palestinian refugees in Palestine. How can they be refugees in their homeland? And the world resuscitates this problem.
I don't think I agree with him here, but this is his view of things. I don't think I agree with this. Intermarrying like daughters and people to other clans and like having relationships with other clans based on how far away you were on a familial level was actually crucial to the development of Islam or to like larger warfare between different clans. But I don't know how he would respond to that because I don't have the opportunity to ask him. So, how crucial was Christianity to development of rule of law? Probably not that crucial at all. I think there are two things that probably help. One is that I don't think Christianity was like home built to like unite a people for combat. Like I think Islam kind of was. And I don't think that, Christianity doesn't have government built into it like Islam does. And Christianity, the peoples in like Europe, I don't know why, but the traditions and stuff that started to form around like governments and constitutions and shit that were passed down, like idolized things like individuality and, protected freedoms and constitutions and shit like that. I don't think that was because of Christianity or anything. I don't think Christianity was necessarily a huge part of that. I don't know where that would come from in Christianity, but.
This is mind-boggling that in, let's say, near Nablus, there are 3 refugee camps. Balata, Askar, and another one. And they are all from this country. How can they be refugees in this country? And the world doesn't ask this question.
I think the reason why they're still considered refugees is to get funding and stuff from UNRWA, but...
Why? Because once you leave your birthplace and you move to another place, even if it's 2 kilometers far, you are in exile. You are a refugee. And this is the mindset of the Middle East. Unfortunately, but this is what happens. And this is why I call upon my Israeli colleagues and others in the world, if you really want to solve the Palestinian problem, instead of creating another state with many clans, which will fall apart like Syria, which it will end up like Syria and Iraq and Libya.
I think the difference is kings and emperors in the West compared to clans in the Middle East. Yeah, but kings and emperors were completely and totally different. In Arab society, there were no kings. Everybody was equal to everybody else. It was incredibly egalitarian and balanced. There was no individual that was better than another individual because of birth or anything else. It was all based upon the honor that you had in your particular, the standing that you had in your group. Like how well did you guys adhere to and follow the particular tenets of, how you lived in some particular region? How well did you perform in combat or fights? How well did you defend people that were close to you familially in conflicts or whatever? That was it. Nobody was born better than anybody else. Nobody was made better or given more status. At the end of the day, it was a very egalitarian society in that sense. Every single person was expected to perform their honor, their duty, their commitment to their family and tribe. Nobody served any other people. Or if they did, it was because... maybe if you raid and capture and sell slaves, but that's it. In the West, there was a much more, I don't believe there was a hierarchy. There was no hierarchy in primitive or in pre-Arab society generally. It was all built on groups of clans basically doing business and working with each other. Whereas in the West, kings and stuff were very hierarchical in terms of their organization.
Wouldn't you better adopt the paradigm which works in the Middle East, the Emirate one? Establish an Emirate in Jericho for the Arikat clan. Establish an Emirate in Hebron for the Jabri, Kawas, Menach, Tamim.
That's not true. Some clans were more socially elevated than others. Yeah, but if a clan was socially elevated, it's because they did something to gain more honor, and the other clan did something to lose honor. That's where the elevation came from. It was based on what you'd done, not based on just birth or based on just. I mean, if you were born into a good clan, this might help, but you also are expected to maintain that. You're not treated, like royalty and everybody worships you just because of a name. You have to continue to defend and you have to continue to defend and live an honorable life according to that name.
In Abu Snana clans,
That would also hold true for Europe, though. I don't have a good background on European history, but my layman's understanding is that is completely and totally fucking dead wrong. In general, I think your lot in life in Europe was kind of based on where you were born into. I don't think commoners or peasants could generally elevate themselves to the aristocratic class. And I think that royalty was generally born into royalty. A prince doesn't become a commoner because he sucks at being a prince or because he doesn't learn to read fast enough. That's my understanding. I could be wrong on that, but I thought that the class divisions, the hierarchical structure of kings and queens and Western society, feudalism, all that was baked pretty hard into just the family you're born into, full stop. But maybe there are parts of huge chunks of European history where I'm missing, but
together with a court which solves every problem within hours, another emirate in Ramallah for the Barghoutis, another clan in Nablus for the 3 clans of Nablus, Masri, Tukan, and Shaka, another one in Tulkarm for the Karmis, another one in Kalkilia, another one in Jenin.
Wasn't the whole knight shit was supposed to be just that? Commoners who proved themselves in battle, elevating themselves to a higher class? My understanding is knights were literally only just high-class people. Those were upper, commoners didn't become knights. A commoner would never be knighted. That's my understanding. I could be wrong, but like I said, I haven't read a fuck ton of European history. I could be wrong, but I thought knights were literally just like the elites. Family pride is why Arabs are all about pride and dignity. If you insult an Arab, you're insulting his or her whole family. It's not like that with Europeans and most Westerners. I'm going to hesitantly say correct. because of what I talked about before, because of the concept of balanced opposition, depending on how far away somebody was that insulted somebody, it is 100% transferable. So it applies to everybody in the group, and anybody in the group can go to anybody in the balanced group, and they can go ahead and take, I don't want to say take vengeance, because it's not necessarily vengeance. It's making equivalent like what happened. So for instance, let's say that we have a grandfather, and then there's a family here, mother and father, and then they have kids here. Like, if somebody here attacks somebody here, this entire line here would be implicated. Like, it just depends. Like, if somebody here attacks somebody here, like, say, directly descending from these two people, right? If somebody attacks somebody here, then nobody here is implicated. It doesn't matter. Like, if you insult somebody who is your, like, first cousin, then, like, within your realm, like, his family might be mad at you and your family might be mad at them or whatever, and you might have a conflict, but it doesn't extend outside of that. But if you attack, like, your third or fourth or fifth cousin, you're now, not only have you attacked a whole other group, anybody in that group could come back on you or anybody else in your whole group as far as the fifth cousin lineage or whatever goes. There's a name for five lineage in Arabic that was used commonly. But this is, you're implicating everybody in your group and everybody in their group if the person that you end up having an issue with is that far away from you in terms of lineage. This is the author in that book calls this balanced opposition. And this is to ensure that every single conflict ends up as roughly equal and no one group tends to dominate anybody else, because you more or less are always balancing the groups that are fighting each other based on how far away you are in relation when you get into conflicts with each other. Yeah. The peace was on behalf of the king. The king ruled on behalf of God. The European rule of law is definitionally rooted in Christendom, aka the West. Okay. I don't really like. I don't have the historical knowledge to know if any of that's true. I haven't seen that that's true, but it might be. But also, I don't know how much I care to debate this subject because I know people are very emotionally rooted into it. I don't know how much that's true or not. My understanding is, my history is just bad for Europe. My understanding is things like constitutional rule of law and individual rights and shit, that this stuff like originated in like fucking Rome. So I don't know like how important Christianity was when I think the origination of a lot of these like structures of government and shit were coming from ideas that had existed like pre-Christian society. But I don't know, maybe it was, and I just don't have the history, I just don't know it, but that's, I don't know, fuck me. But Aboriginal Australians have this exact same system, blood for blood, based on family clans, but the revenge gets exponentially worse based on relation. Yeah, the further away you get, the larger the groups involved, basically. Yeah.
And finish. This is the solution. Let every one of them live within itself, with bilateral agreements with Israel about using Ben Gurion Airport, about using the Ashdod or the Haifa Harbor, about how to go to Jordan. Everything can be solved with agreements if they live in peace with us, and all the chances that they live in peace with us, because clans usually live in peace with others because clans want prosperity, stability, good health, good economy, good life. Usually. Organizations...
All law comes from the Bible. That's retarded. I'm Lebanese, and when I talk to someone else who is Arab, I tell them I'm so-and-so, house of so-and-so. Okay. Destiny, this isn't true. My ancestor was a blind Thatcher, and his son became a knight through jousting and defeated Count Adhemar. Okay.
Like PLO, Hamas, all these, they have to find a raison d'etre, which is based on the hatred to the Jews.
Christianity is literally the most important thing when it comes to European history and civilization, and Destiny just said it doesn't matter. I didn't say it didn't matter. I just said I didn't know if Christianity was relevant when it came to developing a Western understanding of building societies off of constitutions and law-based, individual-based systems. That was explicitly what I said. The reason why I don't like arguing this is because there's a whole bunch of overweight, type 2 diabetic, fat fucking losers whose toes are falling off because they don't even remember to take their fucking insulin, who are so invested in making Christianity and white people like the center of every fucking advancement in history, okay? I don't care. Christianity might have been really important to develop a rule? I don't know. I've said that a million times. I don't know. Okay. I know that you're offended because I'm not like instantly conceding that like the white Christian European is like the origination of all good things in Western society. I don't know. I just don't have the information. And I don't really give a fuck to argue about it that much. I don't really care. I'm not that emotionally invested in it. I think it's cringe. Don't care. Okay.
Clans do not need it. Clans, the raison d'etre is there existing, and they still exist. They never went to nowhere. They live in these places. And unfortunately, the PA in Judea and Samaria and Hamas, until October 6th, they were actually crashing the clans, trying to crush them, in order to hold them. And this is just like a failing state in the Middle East. And this is why we saw the terror in Gaza, and we see the failing PA, because they don't correspond with the right leaders. And they have the leaders.
Why were Jews expelled from so many countries throughout the world? I think that generally because Jewish people wanted to maintain their own independent cultures and systems, they generally were not allowed to participate because they didn't want to integrate into the societies that they were a part of in the same ways culturally. So they were generally barred from participating in a lot of ordinary, like skilled work. So you basically had two types of Jews that existed, I think, throughout the world. You either had poor Jews, in which case, oh, well, look, Jews are obviously a leech on society because they're poor and stupid. Or you had Jews who, because they couldn't partake in traditional like artisan work or whatever, they basically had to do things that were transitory or related to money. So things like being bankers or loaners or whatever else. And now it's obviously, oh, well, those Jews are leeches on society in a financial manner. So I think because Jews didn't want to integrate with the cultures that they were in, because they wanted to maintain their own religion, they were kept separate from ordinary like economic class that they could participate in, which means that you're either poor workers, peasants who were looked down upon, or people that were dealing with financial stuff because you were allowed to deal with that, and then they were looked down upon for that. So that's a very generalized take. I don't know if that's true through every society. That's like my generalized understanding of it.
Those clans, they went nowhere. But unfortunately, the world doesn't understand the mechanism of Arab societies. This is why the West keeps making mistakes. Here and in other countries as well, in Iraq as well. Look, I gave the administration of Obama, and before 2010, before they left Iraq, before they left Afghanistan, 2010, President Obama collected all his advisors to a discussion about what to do with Afghanistan. I went to Washington, D.C. to a conference, and I met with somebody from the State Department, and I gave him a whole plan, how to divide Afghanistan to 11 ethnic stable states, just like the Soviet Union, which fell apart according to ethnic lines, just like Yugoslavia, which today are 6 flourishing countries based on ethnic groups, just like Czechoslovakia.
Okay, hold on. I'm perma-banning you, but before I just let me light you up for this fucking retarded comment. At Destiny, you always speak in generalities. Understand that makes someone really knowledgeable. What makes somebody really knowledgeable is the nuances. Yeah, no shit, you fucking retard. Somebody asked me a general question about Jews, so I responded with a general understanding of it. That's what I said, because my understanding is not specific. That's why I explicitly said, here's my general understanding of it. And I think I said explicitly, I don't know if it goes individually in any fucking country. Yes, that is correct. I don't have specific knowledge of how Jews lived in every single fucking country on the world, and I didn't pretend to, okay? You're perma-banned. Don't ever talk in any chat ever again. Holy fuck, you fucking retard. Jesus Christ.
Slovakia, which was divided according to the two people, Czech and the Slovaks. This is what people want. And you know what? Iran. There is no Iranian nation. There are Iranian citizens, but not Iranian nation.
Hold on. Somebody said, Destiny, just so you know, the Romans were also a clan-like society. You could see this in the fact that a lot of Romans practiced ancestor worship and family ties carried a lot of weight. When I say that, like, they're clan-based, it doesn't mean that, like, family is important. Family is important to everybody, or that, like, your last name was important. The last names are important to everybody, okay? In all of these early societies, and even today. What it means is that for the Arab societies, for the Bedouins, for the roaming, nomadic, agriculture, whatever, for the people that were spread across this region, the tribe and the clan was the foundational unit upon which your understanding of conflict and relation occurred. as I said before, your big difference is that like when you go into an area, okay, in Europe, if two people get into conflict, you're generally asking questions about like, okay, well, like who is the authority here? Who has the power to prosecute a crime? Whose rights are being infringed? What is implicating this person here? Like you're asking questions that are revolving around these concepts of individuality, of rule of law, of rights afforded to people, of what the particular restrictions were on behavior in a particular area. Even in feudal states, there are still going to be like these kind of agreed upon rules. In Arab society, it's not a question. It's not even a question of it. If your family member does something to another family and then a conflict arises out of that, you are never asking the question of, well, why did they attack him? Why did he do this? Or what was this? Was he allowed? It's not even a question. The allegiance is to family first, and then that's it. Family first and over. That's all that matters. Even if you're married, like it could be the case that you are married into a family it didn't happen as often, but a man goes and marries into another family, and then your units get into conflict with each other. But you're married into this one, you might end up fighting against your in-laws because you're more closely related to your family, and you end up going back and doing that. So this will lead to divorces and shit, or people would like obviously stop being married. But like, yeah, that's like the first and last consideration is distance from each other in family tree. It's not a question of like, well, whose rights were violated, who deserved to do what, or blah blah blah. That's the that is the idea, fundamentally different. It's not just like, oh, Arabs like valued their family and Europeans didn't care at all about their family. It's not that. It's like the foundational understanding of structure and opposition in these societies. It feels like by the way you described the Arab clans that it affected Arab society more versus Islam, the same way how Roman culture affected Europe more versus Christianity. Maybe, but for Islam did not change how all of the Arabs acted. The reason why Islam was so successful is because when Muhammad was making the rules of Islam, he made it fit perfectly to what Arab society was. He understood concepts like balanced opposition. So when Muhammad was creating, Islam, Muhammad didn't say, listen, we need to set aside our differences and come together under one religion, guys. This family clan stuff is nonsense. We need to come together and unite. What he said was, oh, no. Actually, we are all part of one family called the Ummah or whatever, and our opposition is the infidel. Whenever anybody in Islam is attacked by a non-Muslim, attacked by an infidel, it is implicating all of us. Right? And then all of us are allowed to take action against them in a form of jihad because now we've been attacked by the most distant relative of the family of Islam. It was like the idea, I believe, I'm resting heavily on the thesis from this book. Okay, so maybe I'll read something different in the future, but this is how it was explained in the conflict of culture in the Middle East or whatever, is how Islam was overlaid from traditional Arab structures of society to make it work so successfully with that group of people. Okay.
Because Iran is sharply divided.
Does any Muslim think like that today? Personally, I'm giving you such abstract readings of history, okay? My feeling is that Islam peaked probably with one of the big caliphates, maybe with the Ottoman Empire, and that ever since the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, Islam as a unifying force between all Muslims is a facade. People in the West and white people think it is like a huge unifying thing. Sometimes Muslims try to think it's a unifying thing. Sometimes Jewish people, Israelis think it's a unifying thing, but it doesn't seem to be that unifying thing. Muslims just have not been able to form another caliphate. They just haven't been able to. Different people rise up and they claim they're going to. ISIS did. And people call for global jihad like Hamas, but nobody listens. Nobody answers the call. And Muslims fight against each other in every single fucking country where they're divided along other familial or sectarian lines, whether it's Ba'ath Party versus other Muslims, whether it's Sunnis versus Shias, whether it's different sects of Shia, whether it's family versus family in Yemen. It doesn't seem like Islam has that unifying element ever since the collapse of all the large spanning caliphates. That's the feeling that I have. Maybe I'll read something to feel like that's wrong, but it feels like it peaked and then it has receded ever since. But
Versions?
Pan-Arabism was much more unifying than Pan-Islam was in the 1900s, maybe, but even Pan-Arabism wasn't very unifying. And I think just once all the caliphates collapsed, the final one, the Ottoman Empire, it just seems like something needs to change for Islam to come back. I don't know.
And you know what? Iran. There is no Iranian nation. There are Iranian citizens, but not Iranian nation. Because Iran is sharply divided. Persians, who are not even the biggest group. The Azeris, the Azerbaijanis, are the biggest group, who are speaking Turkish in Iran. But they are oppressed by the Persians. There are Arabs in the Ahwaz, looking over the Gulf, the Persian Gulf. There are Baluchis, there are Turkmens, and there are Kurds. And these are the 6 big groups of Iran. In addition, you can add another 30 ethnic groups in this conglomerate. Luris and Qashqais and Caspianis and Mazandaranis and many others.
What do you think it is about Islam that they are able to successfully convert so many people? I don't know if they are able to convert people. In the past, they were able to do it because they did it by conquest. That's how the caliphates were built. It was Islamic conquest through regions, and they would forcibly convert somebody because you either a Muslim, or you died, or you lived as a substandard person as dhimmi status if you were Christian or Jewish. Those are your only options. So, I mean, it's pretty easy to convert people when the options are either, like far second-class citizens or death.
Which never became a nation. And this is the solution, to divide Iran to ethnic states. Now, how do I know that this is real, what I say?
I think the current myth/fact is that Islam is the fastest converting religion in the modern era. That might be true, but if that is true, I think it's just because of other things that aren't related to the religion. So for instance, the answer will never be Judaism because Jewish people don't try to proselytize. They don't convert other people. And then the answer probably won't be Christianity because your biggest bets for where you could convert people to Christianity are probably places like Asia and places like the Middle East. And I don't know if any of those places are ripe for conversion because there's so much pressure for other types of religious groups. But in the West, I think Christians generally just don't care as much if people convert. Like a lot of the Christian society in the West is a bit more secular. So it's probably an easy, fertile ground for converting people to other religions. And probably the largest religion that exists on the planet right now that wants to convert people that's not Christian is probably Islam. So by virtue of that, Islam would probably convert more people than any other religion. That'd be my guess. So I don't think that Christian states and Christian society is as much in that hardcore conversion mode right now. It's growing because of birth rates, not conversions. Birth rates probably impacted as well, sure. That a lot of undeveloped countries or smaller countries that are still Muslim majority might have much higher birth rates. That could be it too, sure. But
I published an article in Jerusalem Post 3 months ago about the dismemberment of Iran, which will inevitably happen at some point in the future. Because people are sick and tired of the Persians who oppressed them with the blessing of the rest of the world. And one day, Iran will fall apart according to ethnic lines. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Abdullahian, the one who got killed in the crash, issued through his spokesman a whole tweet, more than 300 words against me. 300 words tweet against Mordechai Kedar. Means what I say was real. Because he wouldn't say one word against something which he would think that it doesn't worth anything. The only reason which he bothered to write a whole article of 300 words against me is only because he knows that this is a real thing. And there is a real threat on the Iranian regime and the Iranian state. The fact that the minorities will one day rise and demand freedom.
Why don't Jews proselytize? I don't know. It's just not part of the religion. I don't know why it's not. I have no idea. I'm not sure.
And unfortunately, the Western world, which believes in freedom, when it comes to Iran, oh no, the Ayatollahs are the good guys. Let them crash the Azerbaijanis. Let them crash the Kurds. Let them oppress the Turkmens. Let them kill en masse all the Baluchis. let them hang up with cranes all the Arabs in the Ahwaz, let them do whatever they like. This is their freedom. Okay? Unfortunately, really, this is really betraying the Iranians. The Western world, the world which believes in freedom and liberty. When it comes to Iran, oh no. The Baluchis, no. The Arabs, no. The Kurds don't deserve. Really, mind-boggling. I have no explanation to this behavior.
Okay, coming back to the Emirates solution, I feel like there may be a few challenges I wanted to bring up that, actually some of which I kind of got from you, was that when it comes to differences between the countries you mentioned, UAE, Bahrain, Qatar, and Palestine, is that I feel like at least some of them, Emirates especially, have like very large immigrant populations who don't have any kind of like national or political interest.
Kedar is a good talker. We heard almost nothing from LonerBox, well, because we're doing interviews, right?
But also, probably the more pressing idea is that these are still sovereign, contiguous states. Even the example you give of the Kurdish region, the autonomous region in Iraq, is still at least contiguous. Whereas in the West Bank, it would be kind of exceptional in the sense that it would be discontiguous, and that it would be the only example of like the Emiratis that I can think of that would have settlements running all the way in between them. And also just realistically, I think if I asked a Palestinian if they want a state or a nation state, they would say yes. They might mean river to the sea. They might mean 2 states for now. There's some smaller minority might say 2 states permanently. I don't think, how is it expected for them to give up their national aspirations for this fairly unique idea that you're presenting?
Yeah. National aspirations are basing on the awareness of a nation. Without an awareness of a nation, there is no nationalism. The question whether they have this awareness is a very serious question, because one of the characteristics of group of people who have a common sense of nationhood, that is marriage. They marry each other, regardless of where you live, who are your parents or your clan, because boys and girls fall in love and they get married. That's how usually it happens in the West. Okay? Here, if you check what happens within the Palestinians, you can see that, let's say, a girl who is like more or less 20 years old, and she's healthy, both bodily and mentally, usually she has no option to get married to a boy from Nablus, because they are, as they say, mush minna, not us, not ours. They are not from us. They are different clans. Even in Hebron, usually they get married within the clan. Jabri get married within the clan. Kawasme, Nachet, Tamimi. And this is the most important criterion for the existing of a nation. Go, look and check, really on the ground, not on the slogans in the newspapers. I had enough slogans. My book about the Syrian regime, Assad in search of legitimacy. This actually is an analysis of the linguistics of the Syrian press. The more the Assad regime, Hafez Assad, tried to convince his people that we are all Syrians united, the more he failed. Why? Because Syria is sharply divided to clans, to ethnic groups like Kurds, like Armenians, and like Arabs. And there are 4 religions in Syria: Muslims, Christians, Druze, and Alawis. And I ignore the Jews who left meanwhile. And the more he tried to convince them they are one nation, the more he failed. And the situation of today, of Syria, actually proves that there is no awareness of nationhood. Because if they had even 1% of this awareness, they wouldn't kill each other as they kill today. Not today, since 2010, we are talking about 14 years already. They are butchering each other. Why? because basically the sense or the feeling or the awareness of togetherness, of nationhood, failed in Libya, failed in Syria, failed in Iraq. All these failing states this is the source of the failure. The Palestinians are no better. The only thing which unites them is maybe the hatred to Israel. Maybe, not even. Because some of them, like in Hebron, they could live with us without any problem. If they have only the ways how to live nicely with Israel, why not? I'm in connection with them. And they say, look, you Israelis, you resuscitate the PA, the illegitimate entity which you created against us, against the clans, and what do you expect us, that we will, what, declare statehood? They will come and kill us with American weapons, which America gave to the PA. Unfortunately, with the cooperation with Israel, because both the Israelis and the Americans did not understand this system of clan. That if you work with, you get Emirates flourishing like Dubai. And if you don't correspond with the clan system, you get failures like Syria. There's no way how to explain. I don't buy slogans.
It seems like he's defining the construction of a clan as something under which leadership would function. That's essentially how he kind of views it. He's saying that this clan structure is so still deeply ingrained in a lot of Arabs across the Middle East that you can't escape it if you're trying to form a state. That might be true for some places. I don't think that's true for Palestinians that live in and outside of Israel anymore. It doesn't feel like it. I could be wrong, but that's the feeling I have, the vibes I have. But I mean, that'll come up more later on in the trip, in other interviews and everything too.
I don't buy slogans. I go to the ground and I see how people behave. And this is way much more significant than what people say to all kinds of pollsters who come from America and understand nothing about the societies. And look, in the Middle East, it's well known within pollsters that the rate of the error rate is tremendous here in the Middle East, because people answer you according to what they think that you want them to answer. And this is one of the problems of the Middle East, is the heritage of the Ottoman Empire. Because if you said something which the policeman didn't like, you will be punished severely. So the Middle Eastern culture is to say what the Middle Easterner thinks that you want to hear. So they will say anything.
So it sounds like, you can tell me if I'm mischaracterizing you, it sounds like your idea for moving forward when it comes to pushing that solution is to just allow the settlements to keep on expanding, I think in your words, disconnecting Palestinian communities from each other so that they're less of a security threat, establishing especially places like the Jordan Valley, even though I think in the Israeli liberal or left side, there's kind of a debate about how important the Jordan Valley is for security purposes. Is the idea just to keep doing that unilaterally until they have no choice but to concede to the Emirates? Or?
Those Israelis who still think that the Palestinian state will be a peaceful country, live side by side peacefully with Israel, are those who brought the Oslo Agreement already in 31 years ago, in 1993. Fortunately, the Israelis, woke up to see the reality. And they know that this is no solution. A Palestinian state will turn into a Hamas state inevitably. And very quickly after it becomes a state. Either by elections, as already happened in 2006, January.
One thing to keep in mind that when people say Palestinians prefer Hamas to the PLO or the Palestinian Authority, this is true, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they prefer Hamas just because they want to violently kill all Israelis. A lot of this is a response to viewing Hamas as being less corrupt than the Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority has always been viewed as a corrupt institution by Palestinians, so just take that for as it is.
Or by coup d'etat, as already happened in June 2007 in Gaza. So, once Albert Einstein, who was a physicist, described insanity by saying that insanity is to repeat an experiment while you hope for another result. You know, physicists know very well if you mixed one material with another material and they blew up, so what do you think? The next time if you mix the same two materials, they will not blow up in your face? So this is the same thing. They do the same mistake, hoping that this time it will not blow up in our faces.
Well, as far as making the same mistake twice, I'd imagine, obviously, unilateral withdrawal from Lebanon, it gets taken over by Hezbollah in the south. Unilateral withdrawal from Gaza, it gets taken over by Hamas. But it feels like when peace negotiations are made and there are mutual understandings and conditions and concessions made on both sides, whether it's Egypt and Israel or Jordan and Israel, it seems like you don't get the same problem. So do you feel like even a negotiated settlement with agreements on security, etc., you still get the same problem? Or
the big difference between Egypt and Jordan on one side and Lebanon on the other side is the fact that, and you know what, you can add Gaza as well to Lebanon, that Egypt and Jordan are functioning states. And since they are states, they are bound with the international conventions.
How do I think Hamas skirts that? I'm guessing you meant to say, how do you think Hamas skirts the same criticism? They don't build shelters for their people, just their org, and their leaders live in comfort in other countries. I don't know today if Hamas is viewed as corrupt or not. Back in the past, they were viewed as significantly less corrupt because people thought that under their leadership, conditions would improve. When a lot of the exit polling was done in 2006, I think when the elections are done, but obviously they haven't had elections since then. I'm sure that the view today is probably maybe less about the corruption thing, but probably more just, I think the Palestinian entity is just seen as worthless to most Palestinians. Like the whole point of the PA was to slowly gain control over the West Bank, and that never really happened. So they're just seen as like, oh, you just help Israel, like basically keep us oppressed and you don't do anything. So it's just viewed as like an inert, corrupt, like whatever organization. And Hamas is seen as not that, in terms of, well, at least not as much, or at least or if they're corrupt, at least they're corrupt opposers to Israel rather than just corrupt rulers that rule us alongside Israel.
They signed, the signature was approved by the Security Council, everything was, established by states and the leaders of states. And as long as these states are stable, the peace agreement apparently will be honored. The problem with Hezbollah and Gaza is these are failing states. Lebanon is a failing state. It doesn't function as a state. It's run by Hezbollah to a large degree. And I wrote about this already 1 week after we ran away from Lebanon. And today the Shia community in Lebanon is the majority.
Yes, and you said it was a very egalitarian and Arab society and more based off family status. I'm confused. Do like princes and kings like today in Saudi Arabia and Jordan not exist, or were they elevated through familiar actions to that and could lose that status? If people were part of large clans and they had like a lot of honor and stuff because they were parts of huge clans, it was because of what they controlled. It was because of how much area they dominated. It was because of how many offspring they could produce, so how large they were. That's where the status came from. You would never, ever, ever be able to walk into another clan and be like, hey, by the way, I'm the king or queen, so you need to respect me. They would look at you. They would look at your lineage. They would see, well, how many people are part of your families? How many people are part of your clans? And they're like, well, how many people can you bring to a fight, essentially? And that's where like the honor and respect would come from. Not because you would say you're the fucking king or queen. No one would give a fuck about that. Today, they're put in charge of countries, I think largely by the British. So now they run the country as well. But like historically, that's, How is that any different than kings or queens controlling lands? Because kings and queens conscript armies. The people that fight for the kings and queens aren't their family members. They're people that are forced to fight for them. It's not based on lineage at all. It's based on who they basically can conscript from the peasants that they're essentially extorting money from because they happen to have to sit in one area to farm crops, basically.
They have the majority of the place. So they have all the rights to control the place democratically. And since Lebanon is a failing state, Hezbollah can do whatever they like, regardless of what the state wants or doesn't want.
Sounds like kings and queens with extra steps. It's absolutely not. A king can treat his subjects however the fuck he wants to. He's a fucking king. Who cares? A king could go and rape a fucking person and say fuck you and be done with it. You can't do that if you're the head of any of these like Arab clans. You can't betray your family like that. You would lose honor. Honor is everything. The only status that you have is the amount of honor that you've protected, that you've garnered, and that you've got in relation to your family. People will kill each other over like perceived loss of honor and stuff like that. One thing that comes up in that book, so we talk about honor killings, for instance. Family members wouldn't kill women because they were having extramarital affairs. They would kill women because other people would find out that they had extramarital affairs. Because part of like growing your clan and growing your family is producing offspring and stuff, and so you would want women to remain chaste. That was like part of there's an Arabic name, expression for this, for Ird, IRD maybe, for the type of honor that people could passively keep essentially. And if a woman were to be extramarital, if somebody else found out about that and started talking, well, because you aren't doing anything about that, you would lose honor as a result. So you would have to kill. There's another name for this. I don't know any of the fucking Arabic shit, but there's a name for like cleaning the affront, and you do that by killing the woman, basically, right? In some cases, not in all cases, but you'd kill the person to remove the stand on your honor, because if somebody found out about it, but. But you would lose honor as a king too by acting tyrannically. No, you could act insane for a bit, but you would be beheaded if you kept. No, it wouldn't be the same thing though. If a king fucked around with a person and fucked them up or some shit, then who cares? It's the king. If this happened in the Arabic setting, then the Arabs would say you have to make this right, or your honor. Conflicts were always considered ongoing until both sides had been made even. For kings and queens, you do whatever the fuck you want. Maybe at some point people will coup you or they'll behead you or whatever, but you don't have to make anything even. This is part of the reasons why in Arab society over the greater Middle East, a lot of them looked down on people that became part of these cities or peasantry or whatever, because they were essentially subjects of whatever state, quote unquote, was extracting resources from them. In Arab society, again, everybody is seen as equal. It's all egalitarian in terms of like how people are supposed to treat you and shit. Now, some people might have more or less honor than another person, but if you have more honor than another person, you can't just go and do fucked up shit to that person, because now them and everybody implicated in their family structure will now come back on you to make things even. Or they'll try to, but this is like this sort of balance is the only way that it could work for these societies, because if people were allowed to run around and subjugate people or treat people like shit, everything would fall apart. Because when conflict happens, whenever part of the honor that you have as a man, when conflict happens, is you're expected to rise and defend everybody in your family structure or clan structure or your cousin, second, third, fourth, however much is implicated. And if people are just like killing each other or fucking with each other, then that disappears. You have to have some loyalty. Like I said, it goes back to that quote from before: me against my brother and I against my cousin and I against the world. It balances out like who is opposing who in particular parties. You can't just go and fuck around with everybody that's beneath you in terms of your structure, because then nobody's going to come and fight for you, and now you mean nothing, basically. Whereas for kings and queens, it doesn't matter. They treat you like shit. They're conscripting an army. They have to fight for you.
The same is with Gaza. Gaza is a failing PA, state in the make, or whatever you can define it. And since it failed, terror organizations can grow up, can flourish, can ferment in these countries and be a danger to all the environment. Look, Hezbollah didn't fight only us. Hezbollah were used by Bashar Assad in order to crush his own population. So far, Hezbollah killed Syrians dozens of times, more than it killed the Israelis. There are places which they couldn't occupy in Syria. So they just put a siege on them until people died of hunger. Where was the world about humanitarian aid?
Where does honor culture come from? Well, that's the only currency that you could trade on. It was the most important part about you. If you have no honor in these societies, then nobody wants to work with you or do anything with you, because if you can't be considered reliable to call upon for conflict, then you're meaningless insofar as a structure, any sort of like tribal clan like structure is concerned. You don't mean anything. You're worthless.
Occupy in Syria. So they just put a siege on them until people died of hunger.
How does honor culture go away? You have to change from the structure of these societies to things that are more like law and order based, individualist or constitutional, where instead of people being doled out rights based on their honor and their lineages, they're doled out rights based on some other source of rights, like constitutions or laws or governing bodies or stuff like that, basically. To be fair, honor is a nebulous concept. Honor in the Arab world is not the same as honor in Japan or other Asian countries, for example. Sure, but honor in the Arab society means very particular things. As a man, it means that you are physically capable, that you do work, that you're going to stand up with the rest of your clansmates if somebody in your family group is implicated in some sort of disagreement, that you participate in all the necessary things. And for women, it means that you're giving birth to offspring, you're taking care of children, you remain fertile as much as possible. You don't do things to diminish the honor of your particular family or clan or group or whatever. The honor meant very particular things, and people had good understandings. People knew the honor standings of everybody else in a particular group.
Where was the world about humanitarian aid to the Syrians under the Hezbollah siege? And it was recently. I don't remember the world so worried about these poor people, really poor people.
How did the tribes deal with outside forces? Would the whole family line come together to defend them, or would it just be that individual clan? Oh, no. It would be the whole family would come together. I think the author of the book gives a few examples where outside forces will come in and fight, but as soon as that happens, whatever is going on, the differences between the clans becomes irrelevant. They'll unite to fight the outside force. So if you've got two families that are fighting and then a larger, more distant relative to both of them were to come in and fight, that could be a European power, somebody external to them comes in to fight, well, now these people will unify and then they'll fight against them. Remember, this is the principle upon which everything is built, is balanced opposition, right? It's the closer the family, the smaller the conflict, the further away in lineage, the more people on your side that are implicated.
One place was Fu'a, another place was Madaya. I can give you all the names of Al-Qusayr, another town in Syria. Where are the demonstrations in the universities, in the United States, in Europe, calling for humanitarian aid to the poor Syrians who are dying because of the Hezbollah siege on the places. Do you remember? Okay. So this is what I say. When it's some kind of discrimination of low expectations, that's what I think. That the world doesn't expect anything from Arabs and Muslims. If they kill each other in Sudan, in Libya, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, what happened? In Iraq, in Turkey, what Turkey is doing to the Kurds, who cares? But when it comes to Israel, international law, humanitarian aid, wow. All of a sudden, the United Nations and the human rights organizations, the whole world wakes up to see, because Israel is, wow. Okay, this is.
I think there might be more similarities between clannish societies and early medieval societies than you might think. No, you probably don't think that, or you have no idea because I don't think I've even spoken on that. Pre-kings and these huge kingdoms, yes, early medieval societies probably did have more similarities here. If you don't have any central state or any central big ruling family, then I imagine that the way that this sort of balanced opposition, the way that these familial ties and everything plays out is probably quite similar. But as soon as you start getting kings and these huge, large institutions of things where people are more specialized, it's not just huge families that are implicated fighting other families, it becomes a fundamentally different type of thing. But before all the big kings and queens, sure.
Unfortunately.
I think bigotry of low expectations is probably part of it. I guess the other half is maybe that in the West, at least, we consider Israel our allies, whereas we don't consider Syria or Hezbollah our allies, which is why I think it was even Ehud Olmert who said that regardless of whatever failures are on the other side, you want to spend more time speaking to your own. What was I going to say? He'll come to me.
Uh-oh.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Yeah.
I just want to what you guys are talking about. Wait, can I?
Cringe.
Speaking of your microphone.
Just lean over me.
Yeah.
Okay. Something that I think is really interesting is Israel, Western-style democracy, understands how the West speaks. Arab societies have their language. Why is it that Israel? So we talk about why does the world care about Hamas? And I think a lot of it has to do with Hamas, or at least some part of it seems to understand the language of the Western world. Arafat seemed like he understood the language of the Western world. Why is it that Israel can't get anybody on the West on their side, but it seems like the Palestinians are so good at engaging in propaganda that for the West looks so convincing, so much more than Israel can? I'm curious.
Well, the Arab world had two good teachers.
Why doesn't Israel try to learn Arabic? I don't know. I think it's because of the same reason my mom didn't teach me Spanish. I think it's like a pride thing. I was shocked to figure out or to learn how few Israelis speak Arabic. That was really surprising to me. Initially, I don't think they initially ever planned on even having Hebrew. I think it was like kind of a cringe idea. It's like an old language and nobody uses it anymore. Like, why the fuck would we do that? And I think there was like one dude, I don't know the whole story, but I think it was literally like one guy who was like, fuck no, like we should all learn Hebrew again. That would be fucking sick as fuck. And he got everybody. Somebody said Eliezer ben Yehuda. Yehuda. CH is the maybe, I don't know the story, but like apparently one dude managed to convince me, like, okay, yeah, let's fucking do it. But when people came to Israel, especially from other Middle Eastern countries, for whatever reason, it just wasn't commonplace to teach your children Arabic, even if the parents spoke it, which I think is really cringe and really stupid. But I don't know, that's wild to me that you would live in Israel surrounded by so many Arabic states and wouldn't learn to speak, especially when your parents already speak it. That's wild to me. Is Yiddish still spoken in Israel? I don't think so. I'm pretty sure Hebrew is the official language. I just made that up. I don't know if that's true or not. I would imagine it is. Well, no, because the signs are written in Hebrew and Arabic. I don't know if it has a state language. I'm not sure.
One is the Soviet Union, which taught many Arabs, including Palestinians, the ways of propaganda. Abu Mazen, his PhD was in Moscow. And many of them learned how to manipulate other people or other peoples with propaganda, how to design propaganda, and how to...
Yeah, I don't know if these are fake Jews or if you're a fake Israeli or you just don't... I don't know if you're... I don't know if you guys are... I don't know who's saying this. I'm seeing people in chat saying, like, Arabic is mandatory to learn in Israeli schools. That's great. Spanish is mandatory to learn in English in American schools for like 2 years or whatever. I don't know why you're bothering to say this. It doesn't contradict anything that I said whatsoever. Most Israelis don't speak Arabic. I don't know why you're typing retarded fucking shit in my chat. I did up to Spanish 4, I think, or whatever in high school. Or Spanish 2 or 3 or 4. 4, I think. I don't remember if it was all 4 years or just 3 or 4. That doesn't mean I speak Spanish. I don't know why you're typing like these, like, well, actually, like retarded fucking things in my chat.
Divert people and to undermine Western countries by using the Western rules of behavior, of democracies, all these things. Another source today is actually Western people who are bored.
I mean, to be fair, why would you force your population to learn a specific language? Well, because everybody around you is Arabic, and it feels like knowing and understanding Arabic would be important to to understand the countries around you. It feels like it would just be really important. I don't know. It feels like you'd want to know that. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Mainly by Qatar. How do I know? Al Jazeera, the main propaganda tool of the Islamists globally and Qatar as well, I mean, it's operated by Qatar, they actually bought many producers, camera people, light people, whatever they needed, not from Qatar. Qataris do not know how to run TV. They bought from CBS, from CNN, from MSNBC, from NBC.
20% of Israelis is Arabic. That's higher than America's population of Hispanic to Spanish speakers. That's because 20% of Israel is made up of Arabs, of Palestinians. So, of course, they speak that language. Now, go look up how many Jews speak Arabic in Israel.
NBC, many others. I know personally people who moved on because the Qataris paid them 3 times what they get paid in the Americans. And they bought professionals to run their agenda. Even the one who founded Al Jazeera was not from Qatar. He's a Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood activist named Jamal Rayyan. And he's, until this very day, he's the content editor of Al Jazeera. So the Qataris, by buying the talents of the Western world, actually use them in order to promote the Islamist agenda which was designed by Sheikh Yusuf Qaradawi, the head of the Muslim Brotherhood, against Saudi Arabia, against the Emirates, against Israel, against the West, against America, against Europe, against everybody who doesn't agree with the Muslim Brotherhood. And Israel closed, finally. I'm calling upon the Israelis to close the branch of Al Jazeera in Israel for many years. And, you know, for full disclosure, I give Al Jazeera interviews. I actually use them in order to say what I want. And I always, by live broadcast, I never agree to record, because if they record, they can do this whatever they like. But on live broadcast, I say...
I mentioned it because it shows that it isn't discouraged and even encouraged. It's absolutely not encouraged. Jews don't speak it because of the simple fact that they don't need it in their day-to-day, and it's very hard to learn a language you don't speak daily. It's not an active choice to ignore... Okay, hold on. Are you Israeli, or are you Jewish, or where are you from? I think it was the majority of Jews living today in Israel are descendant from other Jews that came from Arab countries. I don't know the stats on this, but my guess would be close to 100% of those people, of the Mizrahi Jews or whatever that came into Israel, would be speaking Arabic. And if you don't teach your child your mother tongue, your native language, my assumption is going to be for most people, that's a deliberate choice. That'd be my guess. It was a deliberate choice not to teach your child that. I'm not necessarily saying the state is saying you're not allowed to learn it or whatever, but I think there probably was a cultural reason why, if you came from one of those countries, you're like, fuck that, my kid's going to speak Hebrew. He doesn't need to speak fucking Arabic. That'd be my guess.
Whatever I like. And yes, I use them, yet I call upon the Israeli authorities to close it. And yes, Israel did. Just like Israel doesn't allow Al-Manar of Hezbollah to work in Israel, just like Israel doesn't allow Al-Alam, the Arab-speaking channel of the Iranians, to work in Israel, and Al-Aqsa channel which belongs to Hamas. So this is all, okay. Qatar is no less enemy of Israel.
Mizrahi Jews don't know Arabic? The people that originally immigrated, you're saying that the average first-generation Mizrahi Jew couldn't speak the language of the country that they lived in? So they never communicated with any of the Arabs in they only communicated inside their own communities? I guess that could be possible. They literally had no communications and didn't do... I don't know. Is there a way to look that up?
Can I intervene real quick on the Mizrahi Jews thing?
Sure, 15 seconds, go.
The thing is, a lot of Mizrahi Jews pretty much got discouraged from speaking Arabic when they initially got there because of the... you know how the mentality was of the Ashkenazi secular Jews that came to Israel.
Yeah,
where, like, they have
sure, you don't want to speak Arabic. You want everybody speaking Hebrew. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So pretty much any type of Middle Eastern culture at the beginning that Mizrahi Jews had was kind of punished. And there was several instances where, like, Mizrahi Jews were oppressed for that cause. That might be another reason, not because they just hated Arabs. It's also because Ashkenazi Jews forced their thought process on the Mizrahi Jews to make them, to assimilate them better into the Ashkenazi community.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
That's what I just wanted to hear.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Bye.
Right? And actually, you can Google an article which I wrote 15 years ago, I don't remember when. Know Thine Enemy. Mordechai Kedar, Know Thine Enemy. Google for it. You read about Qatar, what I wrote already 15, I don't remember when. Well, I don't remember. Years ago, more than 10 years ago. I wrote this article. You can find it online. And yes, Qatar is an enemy. But the enemy, you know, an enemy which comes to you with open face is dangerous. But an enemy which comes to you with a mask on his face is much more dangerous, because he makes face as if he's your friend. And this is Qatar. And Qatar actually buys everything. It bought the hosting of the Mondial, of the soccer games in 2022. They by bravery.
There is this opinion that I hate that some historians make of Israel being in line to Western colonies, like what the British did to India and Hong Kong, the Dutch, Germany and Spain, etc., and how conflict only tends to end when the colony is sold back to or destroyed by the indigenous population. That is an assumption that a lot of people make. Oftentimes it can be true. It cannot be true in the case of Israel. The number one defeater for when people say Israel is a colonist project is you ask them, a colony of who? Israel isn't going anywhere unless you kill them all because they don't have a place to go back to. Israel is not a colony because Israel has not been colonized by somebody else because that's where Jews go to live and they see it as their only place. That was a strategic error, I think, that Arafat had initially made when they modeled themselves after the FLN in Al Jazeera. The idea that, like, oh, if we fight hard enough and long enough, eventually these fuckers will go back because they, because they view themselves as like Europeans and shit, and they'll leave. But they're not. They don't want to leave. The Jews that live in Israel, the Jews that went to Israel, that were living there, they don't see themselves as colonists of fucking Europe. They just see themselves as, oh, we return to our historic lands. We're going to just fight here until we die, I guess. So, yeah.
And people, went to jail because of this. Qatar prevented discussing the abuse of human rights of the workers in Qatar who were building all the facilities for the World Cup in soccer towards 2022, and they did not. They paid some Greek politician, a lady who served in the European Union, in order for her to make sure that nobody discusses the abuse of human rights in Qatar because of the hundreds or thousands of people who died because of the heat in Qatar, and they were building the construction sites of these facilities of Qatar. Qatar is a state which buys academic institutions, buys politicians. They are one of the donors of the Clinton Foundation.
So he gets pretty wild when he starts getting into like foreign politics, like Europe and shit. I don't know how true this is of like some of these contributions. I do know that Qatar and Iran do have like decent like academic reach into the United States in like surprising ways, given the populations of those countries. I wouldn't expect there to be so many like professors or people from Iran. Iran, I think, has actually a specific name for this. Iran program, foreign schools. What do they call this? Fuck. I think there's a name or there's a program in Iran that tries to shoot like academics and stuff to other parts of the world. I don't remember the name of this. Fuck. I read this in an article that had to do with the guy that negotiated the Iranian nuclear deal. The thing he said about Qatar bribing European politicians, Jesus, is true. Look up Qatargate. Oh. Okay, I don't know anything about that then. I have no idea. Oh, thank you. Qatar corruption scandal at the European Parliament. An ongoing political scandal involving allegations that European Parliament officials, lobbyists, and their families have been influenced by the governments of Qatar, Morocco, and Mauritania. Mauritania? Oh, okay. I don't know anything about that. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Did you know that the Haganah brought Adolf Eichmann to Palestine? Nope. I know they brought your mom to my dick, though. Oh.